Hey, I am Ryan Muncie, owner of House of Strength and your host of the House of Strength podcast. So I want to thank you for listening and welcome in today's guest, Andy McCloy. Andy is the owner of Body Creations, a sports performance in Madison, Alabama. Andy, thanks a lot for coming on and talking to us today.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
So for people listening, Andy and BCI, that's his gym, Body Creations. They are becoming a pipeline for elite level D1 athletes of all sports in the Southeast. You're in Madison, Alabama, and Andy is getting to a point now where a lot of professional athletes are seeking him out and traveling down to spend their off seasons with him so that they can get bigger, stronger, faster, healthier, and perform better. So, Andy, that's really cool. Congratulations on. I know you're several years into this, and you've put a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears into this. So congratulations on everything that you've got going on.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate that.
Why are these guys seeking you out? What do you guys do differently?
I'd like to think this is we do a good job. But actually, it started out, I started a NFL Combine preparation program back in about 2005. Literally, I was just reaching out to agents saying, hey, I can provide this service. After spending time traveling around the country and learning from guys that I really respected in the combine world, we put together this program. We started marketing it to what I would call lower tier agents. I kind of got a hit with this one guy, and he started sending me people. One of them happened to be local at Alabama A&M University. Guy had a priority free agent grade. Was running a 4.8-ish 40. Guy told me if we can get him in the 4.6, 4.5 range, he'd be draftable. We got him down to a 4.56. There was a guy named Johnny Baldwin, actually, played at Alabama A&M. He ended up getting drafted in the 5th round. So we significantly increased his draft profile. That created a really good rapport with that one agent. So then he constantly started sending guys to me every year. So it started to grow organically that way. And then once we helped a few guys get into the league, they would talk to other guys in the league and then bring guys here in the off season. And now this year, actually, a kid that I trained from 8th grade all the way up, Jordan Matthews, was drafted into the 2nd round. So luckily at this point, we're getting guys from multiple different angles.
That's really cool. So I mean, essentially, you did what you could to get started, and it snowballed once you were able to provide the results.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it was just something I got really passionate about at one point in time, and I really went after it. Once we started putting some things in place and started helping some guys get results, and it just kind of snowballed, like you said.
So I know that you were at the NFL draft this year with Jordan. That had to have been a really cool experience, and like you said, you've had him since 8th grade, so you spent a lot of time with him. I'm sure that was a really cool moment for both of you guys.
Yeah, actually, I didn't get to go to the draft with him, but I was talking to him throughout the entire process, especially the days leading up to it. He came in town and trained with me 2 weeks prior before him leaving for New York. I would say in the 13 years I've been doing this, that was probably the highlight of my career. Watching him grow and become the football player that he became and the man that he's become.
That's really cool. So when you get an athlete as an 8th grader, what kind of stuff are you doing? I mean, obviously the things that he does now in the gym with you are different than when he started with you. So with an 8th grader, what are you looking at? What are you trying to do and accomplish with them there?
Everything for us starts with an assessment. You can get some 8th graders they're pretty mature, and then you get some 8th graders that aren't so mature. So everything for us starts with an assessment. We usually assess movement quality. From movement quality, we have some strength and power markers that we look into, and then we build a program, to suit their needs.
So I know we've talked before, and I know that this is an assessment that you do that with everybody who comes in your door, regardless of age or demographic, whether it's an adult, a kid, a high school, college. You just mentioned some of the power markers. What are you guys using there for power markers?
We're really simple there. We do jump testing, so we're doing broad jumps, we're doing vertical jumps, and then we do a single leg triple jump. Those are our 3 main lower body power markers. And then for upper body, we do an overhead scoop toss, throwing it over your head backwards, and then we do a jumping chest pass.
Okay. So what is that showing you for somebody who's not, somebody listening who doesn't never done that before, doesn't know, and is kind of curious, they may want to know what their power capabilities are. What's good? What are you looking for there?
What I'm looking for is to give a kid a number that he can zero in on and improve. It's really that simple.
Right.
We don't create like a power profile and say, you're in the 80th percentile or 90th percentile the way some people do. It's just not applicable to what we do, quite frankly. I just want to give a kid a realistic idea of where he is and what he needs to improve on.
Right.
The kid's got a 20-inch vertical. Last thing I'm worried about is improving his power. I'm going to worry more about improving his strength.
Right.
If the guy's a little bit higher in that vertical, if he's a 32, 33, we might focus more on power variables at that point.
Okay, really cool. That's really cool. And I know that, like we said, you use this with adults too. So, I'm probably guessing that you're not testing verticals with adults. How do you translate this to the adult population?
In our adult population, we just have basic strength tests. We do a pull-up and we do a push-up test. If they can't do a pull-up, we're doing an ISO hold, where they just hold their chin over the bar and time them there. And then we do a strict push-up test.
No, we have a lot of adults that come to us who have never been able to do pull-ups in their life, and that's a goal that a lot of people have, and they want to be able to do pull-ups. So when you guys get athletes or adults into your gym who have never been able to do pull-ups, what are some of the things that you do to progress them into being able to do pull-ups for the first time?
It depends on their level of conditioning. I would say, to be honest, the number one thing is get most people to lose weight first. If they can drop some body fat, their strength to weight ratio is going to improve. We do start a lot with isometric holds. We'll do timed holds of varying times, based on their strength level. From there, we usually focus on eccentrics with then an assisted concentric part. So they'll hold themselves above the bar, lower themselves in, say, 4 to 7 seconds. We'll then help them back up on the concentric phase, allow them to hold their chin above it for a second to get into a good neutral position, then again to lower themselves again in the eccentric phase. I've found that once you get a little bit more eccentric control, the concentric phase comes easier. And then usually we'll progress to a band. But kind of got a rule with bands. If the bands make it look ugly, you're not ready for the bands yet. And then generally, I think as the athlete gets stronger overall from deadlifting, squatting, improved core strength, you'll see some residual benefits there in pull-up strength as well.
Awesome. So they're, as that core and the rest of their body gets stronger, they're less like a fish flopping around on dry land when they hang on that pull-up bar.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think you need to create that linkage. You need to get the upper extremities and lower extremities locked in together. We teach a lot of tension techniques when you're in that position too. We want to create a lot of tension and try to link the entire body together while you're driving yourself above the bar.
It's a really cool, concept or visual cue to that word linkage. I like that. What are some of the tension techniques that you guys use to help people grasp that concept?
Abdominal bracing, making sure that we kind of posteriorly tilt the pelvis back a little bit, really engage the glutes, and then tense every muscle in your body to create that irradiation effect. Pavel is somebody that really kind of influenced me in that area. The more irradiation that you can create, the more tension you're going to have throughout the entire system. Things work better when you have tension.
There's a cool a handshake trick, and I'm not sure if that's from Pavel or not, but I think you're nodding. You know what it is, where if you shake somebody's hand and you squeeze your non-shaking hand, your left one, as hard as you can, and clench your butt cheeks, then you get more force into that hand that you're shaking with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's exactly what irradiation is.
Something like that. Or I think the first time I was exposed to, I think it was his book, The Naked Warrior, I think. But yeah, same exact concept.
Yeah, that's some cool stuff. So I know another thing that you guys do at BCI, you start people with the zero block. Can you kind of elaborate on that? Tell us what it is, what the purpose of that is, and why other people should probably adopt that policy.
We started a Block Zero program. We kind of stole that from Joe Ken. Joe Ken is the creator of the tier system. He's a guy that's highly influenced me, especially when I used to work a lot with teams.
And for people who aren't familiar with Joe Ken, he is strength coach for the Carolina Panthers, right?
Yep. He was just voted the Strength and Conditioning Professional of the Year. out of all sports by the NSCA. He's also won the college strength coach of the year, and I believe he's the only guy to have ever done that. He is he's the man. But Joe's Block Zero is basically all body weight style movements and positioning. Teach athletic position. We do a combination of different isometric holds and body weight exercises. Depending on the athlete's ability, or even adults, they could stay in that phase from anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. Generally, after 6 weeks, we'll move them out of there. Now, if we're talking about a team, and we're dealing with a young team, like an 8th grader who's transitioning into 9th grade, we may spend an entire summer in Block Zero.
Mm-hmm. So there's no predetermined time frame of staying in it. It's more of, once you've proven that you've mastered the concepts and the things that we want you to get out of this phase, only then will you move out of it.
Exactly. And then I think if you're talking about in a large group situation, that's kind of where the art of coaching comes in. You kind of got to know what guys are ready to progress on and what guys aren't, and just really stick them, to that. Everybody wants to get out of that phase as fast as possible, but you can create some humbling and educational opportunities.
Yeah, there are some incredibly humbling body weight exercises and moves. And so you guys are doing, I know you said body weight stuff, movement patterns. You're doing, I guess, primal movements, things that will lay that foundation both for barbell work as well as speed and agility type work later on?
Sure. I guess it depends on how you define that. I like the old Paul Check way of classifying things. We're going to squat, lunge, push, bend, and twist. I forgot push, pull, bend, and twist. And bending is more like hinging. For us, we do carry and we do crawl. So you're going to do a combination of all those things: squat, lunge, push, pull, bend, twist, carry, and crawl. And, depending on where you sit on a continuum of strength and ability, depends on where we're going to place you.
And I think the really cool thing about that template is that, and I know from talking to you, we've talked before about when we both launched some of our boot camp style adult programs, that's something that works really well for teams, for athletes, but also for the adults. And I think when we talked before, that's pretty much how you set up your adult boot camp style class. I don't want to call it a boot camp because I know that's not what you call it.
We use the word because it resonates with people, but I'm not a fan of that word. I just think a lot of people have to picture the guy in camo with the whistle yelling and really bad exercise technique. But we try to create self-limiting opportunities where it's really kind of hard to screw something up. It's really kind of hard to mess up pushing a prowler. It's hard to mess up carrying 2 dumbbells, and sometimes they're corrective in nature. You're not going to be able to carry them very far with bad posture.
Right.
So we try to choose exercises that help improve the body's positioning.
Yeah, that's a really cool way of looking at it. So let's talk a little bit about heart rate variability. I know this is something that you guys are getting into. So for people who are listening and they have no idea what this is, give us the broad strokes on what that is, and then we'll kind of dig in a little bit more on what can be done with that.
In a very simple way, heart rate variability is an assessment of the state of your nervous system, of autonomic balance. Joel Jameson is the guy that we've kind of relied on for most of his information. We have the BioForce Pro trainer that we're just now getting into using. I've used this system myself before, but it allows you to quantify the level of fatigue that somebody is under in a very simple way. Generally, the more aerobically fit somebody is, the higher their HRV is going to be. And that corresponds with your resting heart rate to some degree. So the higher that we can drive somebody's aerobic fitness, generally the higher their HRV is going to be. And then the system in itself allows us to kind of dial in our programming. They have a color code that they use to assess state, which I believe you're familiar with. Green is ready to go. Orange or amber means you're kind of moderately, smoked. And then red means you're completely smoked. And based on where somebody comes in is how we'll scale their training. If somebody comes in red, we're going to make sure that we do primarily restoration methods. And then if somebody comes in amber or orange, we're going to go ahead and just reduce the intensity and overall volume of things that they're doing. And if somebody's in the green, they're ready to rock and roll with what we have scripted out for today.
That's really, really cool. And there's a lot of information in what you just said. So I'm going to back up. So for people who have never even heard of this or seen it at all, really, there's a ton of different ways to do this and to get the measurement. I know the one that I use just has I have a polar heart rate monitor that goes around my chest and it hooks up to an app on a smartphone. Is that how you guys are doing it, or are you using something?
That's how pretty much all the standard HRV measuring stuff is done at this point, whether you're talking about like iThelete is another company, BioForce is Joel Jameson, and then you have Omega Wave, who also does some HRV stuff as well, although their Omega Wave system is significantly more than HRV.
Right. So when this is, do you guys do it when people come into the gym, or do you have them do it first thing in the morning when they wake up?
First thing in the morning. That's the cool thing about the pro trainer is basically they do it in the morning on their own, and then as long as they have internet at the house, that data is uploaded to a cloud. Myself or one of our trainers can access that information in the morning. I do want to be clear, though, there's a lot of people that are kind of making HRV as the end-all, be-all. It's just another piece of the puzzle. It certainly doesn't tell you everything,
right.
But it gives us some objective way to measure fatigue, and I like that.
Yeah, it is definitely, it's almost becoming a lightning rod in the industry. There's a lot of guys out there saying, oh, Herschel Walker and, all those other guys knew how to auto-regulate without having to do this. And, I think you and I as coaches and other coaches who, rely on, our clients, when you talk to your clients and your members, a lot of times they're just as passionate and motivated as we are. And they kind of know that, hey, if I say I'm okay and, if I say I'm not, then he's going to make me do something that is less intense than what I really want to do. So this is kind of a way to get the real story that maybe they might not want to tell us on any given day. It almost removes, for me, I like it because it removes the emotional tie that so many people have with training.
Yeah, I think we're all taught to kind of like always push through things. And I think, people are worried about looking like a wussy or, whatever. Certainly don't like to be singled out. But like you said, it removes the emotion. It removes the judgment. And I think it also provides a little bit of feedback. If they had a poor night's sleep, if they went out drinking, and then all of a sudden their HRV drops, because it measures all stress. And as you know, stress is not just what you do in the gym. There's a lot of other factors that influence that.
Right.
So whether you use HRV or not, I think you need something. And I think relying on, some other things like just the way people look and how they communicate to you it's a little more flawed. But there's been a lot of success with people using just question and answer. How do you feel today? How well did you sleep? If you've got time to sort through all that data, that's great. But I would rather use something that's simple and easy like this.
Right. So I know a lot of people who, I guess, when I think about this, both athletes in that high school, college range who maybe haven't had enough experience or haven't been around long enough to kind of be as in tune with their body as somebody who, like you, who have been doing this as long as you have. Or, when you think about the adults, people who, may not be used to feeling the things that they're feeling. I think this is cool because it separates the nervous system from kind of the muscular system where, sure, you may come in one day and you feel really sore from previous work, but your nervous system isn't drained. So you may be in that green area and it's saying, hey, you're ready to rock. But at the same time, what you're feeling is I'm really stiff. I'm really, muscular wise, I'm not recovered. How do you guys handle that? What's been your experience on that side of it?
It's not really a specific situation that I've had to deal with, to be completely honest. If somebody came in and they're really sore and they're still in the green, to be completely honest, if they felt really physically smashed, I'm probably going to reduce their volume and intensity anyway, especially if we're dealing with an adult. I'm not looking to cripple somebody just because my monitoring device, said that they're ready to go. So I think it's another piece of the puzzle, and I think it's very specific to the population that you're dealing with.
Yeah. So, and again, for people who haven't seen this, essentially you get a baseline reading every single day, and over the course of, I think it takes about a week to develop that baseline. Is that the one you use after a week? So when you wake up, you have this baseline reading, and each day after you get that baseline, when you wake up, you're checking your heart rate variability. So it tells you, like Andy said earlier, whether the amount of stress that you are experiencing has put you above or below that baseline for the day. So, what exactly, so heart rate variability is not simply your morning heart rate. What is it measuring exactly?
Heart rate variability, the simplest way that I can put it for somebody that's listening to this is it's an assessment of how fatigued your nervous system is.
Right. But
It's
it gets
balance.
it's getting that number by basically the difference, like the very minute differences in the time between your
The
heart
time
rate.
between each beat.
Right. That's what the variability is.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that for people who haven't learned what you've learned. What program? I know you said earlier you're going through a program that's kind of helping you guys implement this.
Again, Joel Jameson's Bioforce is what we have decided to use.
Okay.
And one of the most intriguing things about that to me is that it came along with a certification. That certification has an education process that takes people through what HRV is, how to apply it to your programming, and also the history of HRV. That way we kind of plug one of our trainers into it, bring them up to speed at least enough to interpret the data, and then make assessments on how they're going to change our programming.
Gotcha. So we'll put that in the show notes, and that way everybody listening, if they want to check it out, they can go find that. We'll have a link to it in the show notes on the blog. Are your members enjoying that? Do they think that's pretty cool to play with and see?
They definitely think it's cool. I will say, there's going to be some speed bumps in the road. If somebody wakes up in the red, some people are going to fear, like, maybe I shouldn't train at all. Or maybe they think restoration methods is, sitting at the pool all day. But when you're in the red, it doesn't mean you shouldn't train. It just means the training should change. Generally speaking, we'll go ahead and we like to have a lot of our athletes train with heart rate monitor watches. And so if, say they're in our boot camp program, as an example, that's obviously usually not aerobic work. But if they come in the red, we will then scale their program back to aerobic capacity work. I'm using a Jameson term for aerobic system development, where we would keep their heart rate around 120 to 150 beats per minute. We may have the rest of the group doing, but just at a lower intensity.
So I think we cut up on the audio. You said that you're going to have them doing essentially the same thing, just at a lower intensity.
We may. I mean, we've also set up a series of recovery circuits for people that fall into different categories. Some of those things could be corrective based for other people. Other of them could be a little bit more demanding on the body. We generally just try to keep their heart rate around 120 to 150 to do cardiac output training or aerobic capacity training.
So I want to kind of clarify some of that, because a lot of people listening may be confused, thinking that, well, I thought boot camp was aerobic work. And the reason I want to clarify that is, we're in essentially the same boat with our program that we have in the mornings. So typically, if they're just doing as it's scripted, their heart rate is actually higher than that.
Again, it depends on the level of fitness. When we've got some people that really need to push themselves hard to get beyond that typical aerobic zone.
Right.
Generally, the way that we define aerobic work is anything under the anaerobic threshold.
Okay.
Now, that varies per person.
The heart rate cutoff that you're using for that is over that 150, 160?
Yeah, so another way that we would use things if we're doing an interval is we would try to get somebody to jack their heart rate up around 160 to 170. Now, some people, if they don't have a heart rate monitor watch, their recovery time may be, 15 seconds, and then they go again. However, if you have a heart rate monitor watch on, it allows you to let them fully recover and then go again. That way you can add a little bit more specificity into your training.
Gotcha. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I want to kind of go back and bring up now, especially since it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about here with the aerobic work for you guys, you're kind of defining that with these monitors or cardiac output in that 120 to 150 range. You guys have found that the higher someone's aerobic capacity is, the better they do with that heart rate variability. Or essentially, the better your general physical preparedness, your GPP, your aerobic capacity, the more resilient you are as a human and your body is. So, what kinds of things are you guys doing to help people improve that specific capacity?
Which is in a very simple way. If you have to constantly rely on your lactic systems or your anaerobic systems, you're going to create a higher level of fatigue. The aerobic system is basically refueling your lactic systems, right? So the higher that I can build an aerobic base or improved capacity, the less you have to rely on your lactic system, which will allow that athlete to play at a higher level and move faster later in the game, as opposed to experiencing more fatigue.
So, for people that may or may not have a grasp quite the way you and I do on those terms of like lactic system, aerobic system, if we looked at like a rate of perceived exertion scale, so high output being the lactic system where you're thinking 8, 9, 10 max effort, aerobic, you guys what define that maybe 5, 6, 7 somewhere in that range, a moderate output.
I think that's one way that you could look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it also depends on what you're trying to do with that information. To be honest, I don't use RPEs that
Yeah,
much.
no. I'm not. I'm definitely not trying to like pigeonhole you into. Oh, Andy said train at this RPE. But so for just not everybody listening is a strength coach. So when
Sure.
you say things like the lactic energy system, and we want to be in trying to help people that don't quite grasp that. I guess have a way to kind of convert that in their mind or relate that to what it is that you're saying.
I would say high intensity interval conditioning would be what I would call lactic.
Right. Right.
Durations over, 35, 40 seconds. If we're working alactic capacity work, that's a very short, brief period of time. And actually, we use that primarily with athletes. More lactic work, longer intervals is better for people with just general fat loss.
Gotcha. Um, that's all really, really interesting stuff. I'm digging the fact that we can make ourselves more resilient to stress both in the gym and out of the gym by improving that GPP or that aerobic um, capacity. And that's something that has taken kind of a back seat or it's gotten a bad rap a lot recently with all of the hey, you've got to do high intensity intervals and you got to sprint, jogging sucks, cardio sucks. So what kind of stuff are you guys doing? How are you kind of navigating around that or I guess helping people with that area of it?
I guess we just educate our clients. We don't have people coming in here saying, "Oh, I think that's the community that we're in," and certain people that I guess that don't get the aerobic systems involvement
Right.
and everything. But generally, our clients, they trust what we tell them to do. If we tell them that we want them to spend a few weeks developing an aerobic base, they listen. And in fact, that's one of the things that we do when we try to bring people into our large group metabolic program, our boot camp. Is generally the first few weeks, we ask them to train at a lower intensity. Just to help build that base before we get into heavier lactic stuff.
Do you encourage your clients and members who need to build that base to do things active rest on their days off from the gym?
Sure.
Do you
Yeah.
guys do you guys have things in the gym that they can do there at BCI, or do you have them go like outside and hike or swim, or what kind of active rest type stuff do you?
I would encourage all that, to be honest. Really getting outside and doing more things, I think, is important, whether or not it's gauged by a heart rate monitor or not. The ideal thing that we try to do with most of our large group people is get them to lift weights heavier. So the ideal thing for me and for most people, I think, is if they did two, semi-private training sessions where they're actually lifting heavier loads, and then 2 to 3 days a week of metabolic training. I found that combination with recovery work mixed in, whether that's going for a walk or a hike, or if you wanted to do something a little bit more directed, like cardiac output work, I've found that is the most beneficial way to do things.
Yeah, I think that's cool, and that's we've found very similar results. 2 to 3 heavier lifting sessions, 2 to 3 of the metabolic type sessions, like you said, mixed in with a lot of recovery work. Foam rolling, you guys do a lot of that. Soft tissue work.
We do foam rolling before every session. I mean, and we do a little bit of stretching too. I mean, I'm not somebody that completely craps on stretching. I do think that it has some relevance and importance. Generally, we start with some foam rolling, some stretching, and then we'll do some breathing work, and then we get generally into our warm up from there.
The breathing stuff, do you do that separately, or do you guys build that into some of the rolling and warm up type stuff?
After we're done with the foam rolling, that's generally when we go into some basic breathing reset stuff. And that's something I'm really just now getting into. I'm going to go to the PRI course in August. Indianapolis is where it's going to be.
Okay.
It's the Myokinetics course by PRI. We've just basically been using some basic breathing resets I've learned from other guys in the industry like Mike Robertson, Eric Cressy, Bill Hartman, a few of those guys.
What you call them resets? I've never heard them referred to resets before. But what are some of the common things that you find people doing incorrectly? I know we've had a few people talk about breathing on the podcast before. I think it may be in line, but I'm just curious to see if you've seen the same, I guess, deficiencies.
Most people are inefficient breathers. They breathe with their accessory muscles as opposed to breathing through their diaphragm. So they breathe in deeply, you see their chest raise first, neck really expand here. They're not breathing through their belly or using their diaphragm. So making people more aware of how they breathe and how inefficient they are. I think just laying them on their back, putting one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest, and think about breathing into the lower hand first and then watch that air rise. We usually go about 4 seconds in, hold it for a brief second, release the air in about 6 to 8 seconds, and then wait another 2 to 3 seconds before we breathe in. A lot of times we get a lot of athletes and adults that are overextended. They have that really, chest puffed out extension posture. So we found that their diaphragm isn't working correctly. When they exhale deeply, we're bringing the rib cage down and the pelvis closer together, putting them in a better neutral spine and position.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. That's pretty much spot on with what everybody else has said. I guess it was, I want to say it was episode 6 where we had some chiropractors that came on and talked about some stuff like that. So
it's been around about 10 or 11 years now, because I remember hearing about it from a physical therapist a long time ago, and I thought it was it was kind of silly, but it seems like now, PRI and breathing is the next big thing. I've heard a lot of people say, FMS was the big thing for the past 10 years, and
right.
The next 10 years is going to be all about breathing and PRI.
Yeah. It's crazy when you take somebody who's not breathing efficiently and you show them that little trick that you just talked about. They instantly feel better. Their stress levels go down. They're getting more oxygen to every part of their body, and it's something as simple as, everybody thinks that they breathe correctly because you breathe all day, every day. Well, if I wasn't breathing correctly, I wouldn't be alive. Well, that's not true.
That might be the one thing that's helped me more than I have a severe injury history. I'm waiting on 2 hip replacements. I broke my back in 2 different places, and breathing has probably been the most powerful thing that I've added to my training over the past year to get me out of pain, restore some positioning that I had lost, and I'm moving better than I was in years past.
Wow, that's really cool. All from the breathing stuff.
A lot of it had to do with breathing, no doubt.
Okay, all right. Well, we're coming up on the end, Andy. Let's give everybody a chance to find more of you. So where do you want people to find you?
Just our webpage has general information about me and our program. You can go to www.bodycreationsinc.com. That also links to andymccloy.com if that's easier to remember. That's the best way to get a hold of me and find out information. I don't have much of an internet presence. That's not really my thing. But if you want some general information or you want to reach me, that's the best way to do it. Or you can find me on Facebook. I'm pretty interactive there. And you can just find me at Facebook/Andy McCloy.
All right. So, Andy, again, congratulations on everything that you guys have accomplished down there. I know it's you've been doing it, like you said, for a while. So, and we didn't even talk about some of your Pro Bowlers in the NFL. So we got to make sure to throw that out for you. But,
sure.
Two questions here, or 2 pieces of advice that everybody has to every guest on the podcast is going to give 2 pieces of advice before we close. One of them is on topic. So in regards to what we've talked about, the number one thing that you think people could take away from this. And then the second one is off topic. It can be anything. If you could only give one more piece of advice to somebody, what would you tell them?
Okay, who am I talking to? That's probably something I should have asked you before we got started. Who is our audience? Is it more general fitness people, or is it strength coaches, or? It's
going to be all of that. We've got clients. It's think about who's the membership at your gym, and then your peers. So we've got athletes, we've got adults, their parents, we've got other strength coaches, people that want to be stronger, healthier, kick more ass.
Okay. The number one thing that I would take from this then for that population of people is that there's a lot of things that could be holding you back from getting the results that you want. Some of which are probably things you're not even thinking about, like lifestyle choices, ranging from sleep to partying to breathing. So, sometimes, you can't out-train a bad diet. You can't out-train a bad social life either. So, take a look at your life and see what you can manage from that standpoint. That might be the key to unlocking some results for you.
Awesome.
Definitely goes for athletes too.
Okay. All right. So off topic, if you could only give somebody just one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Oh, man. Live your values and chase your goals, man. I mean, we call that being a warrior. It's not about beating on your chest, being a tough guy. Living a warrior's code. You can kind of see my shirt there.
Yeah.
It's just living your values and chasing your goals every single day, making sure you relentlessly chase that down until you got them.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, that's it, man. Andy, we appreciate you. I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Thanks for educating people. And for everybody listening, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check us out on iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and we will have the video version of this on the houseofstrengthgym.com website, along with show notes, links to some of the resources that Andy mentioned. And until next time, hope you have a great one. We'll see you soon.